There we go. Good evening, everyone. I know we have a few people coming in late, but I like to try to get started on time. My name is Jody Pushkin. I am the manager and curriculum writer for the Tampa Bay Times newspaper and education program. And I am going to apologize in advance. Whenever I talk to my computer, my cats think I'm talking to them. So if you hear any crying in the background, I will mute myself when I'm not talking, but if you hear any crying, I promise you there are no animals being abused in my house. So I am going to introduce Brandon Moore to you first. Brandon is the public communications manager at Tampa Bay Water, and he is the person responsible for helping us get a grant to do our teacher guide and our webinars. Brandon, over to you.
All right, thank you, Jody. So yeah, just really quick, I work for Tampa Bay Water. We're the region's wholesale drinking water supplier. So we serve 2.5 million people through our member governments, which are Hillsborough, Pasco, Pinellas counties, and the cities of St. Pete, Newport Richey, and Tampa. And we really have one mission, and it's to provide reliable, clean, safe water to the Tampa Bay region now and for future generations. But we like to do that while being good stewards of our environment. So it's important for us, really important for us to educate our community about where water comes from in Tampa Bay, but also how we can conserve and protect it. And we know that we can't do that alone. So we partner with our community, like organizations like Newspaper and Education that share our commitment to protecting our environment. So really that's what we're here for. Thank you all for attending the webinar and to learn and then take this information back to your students. And we for sure appreciate the work that you do. I'll also mention that we're available for STEM events, speaking engagements. We have a source water protection mini grant program. This is how this workshop was funded. So you could receive up to $10,000 for projects related to source water protection in the Tampa Bay area. And that's at tampabaywater.org/grant. So that is all I have, and I'll let you get back to your workshop.
Thank you, Brandon. Appreciate that. And Tampa Bay Water is a great source for information. If anybody's looking for information for teaching, the information we're going to talk about tonight comes from Tampa Bay Water and also the Southwest Florida Water Management District. I think I got all that whole long title in there. So I'm going to introduce Rachel. Most of you, I believe, know who Rachel is. Rachel Kingdom is one of our fabulous teachers. She works with NIE all the time, and she is also a is it Splash Grant recipient?
Yes, ma'am.
Splash Grant recipient. So I'm going to turn it over to her, and I'm going to let people in who are in the waiting room.
Thank you. Okay, again, my name's Rachel Kingdom. I've been teaching for about 12 years now. I do a lot with water conservation. I'm going to do my best to share my screen right now as far as water conservation goes in the science classroom. I do write for grants as well. So he was talking about getting grants. And that's where kids benefit a lot. They not only get the education, but they get the hands-on experience as well. So we do a lot of fun stuff, even in environmental science. And I love environmental science. This is just some pictures of the classroom, an area that I have set up. It contains an aquaponics system in the area, as well as other hands-on things for the students to learn. We have a conservation, rescue, rehabilitate, release. And right now we're in the midst of restoring our gardens, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. So going from what water conservation means, water conservation is to, use it wisely and try to not be wasteful with it. It roughly more than 80% of our fresh water supply is found in aquifers. And that was updated about a year ago, July. And it's, why is fresh water in short supply? Well, to be honest, as the population increases, we are going to be using more of it. And as the population increases, we also have more pollution. And so we are taking from our natural resource. Fresh water is not evenly distributed over Earth as well. And there are a couple labs that I do as far as water quality testing. We test pH, nitrates, phosphates, potash, which is potassium, dissolved oxygen, turbidity. And I use what's called a 9-factor water quality kit that I obtained from one of the grants. Looks like this. And the kit allows you to test for, if it allows me to open, if it doesn't, I'll pull up the other browser. So I don't know if you can see it, but I'm going to pull it up, stop share and reshare so you can see it. So with the water quality, we have it that you saw was an aquaponic system. We also have a hydroponic system. Kids use pH strips and pH probeware. They use nitrate ware, different types of technology in order to test for what I had already mentioned. They can also use this water quality test kit, and it actually directs them on how to, if I can get it in there, it directs them on how to test for the certain things. And they use like little test strips that they dip in the water, and then they can match it against the color charts. So we use this different, we'll test the pH, nitrate, phosphate, potash, and we'll test that against the probeware to see kind of how accurate it is. And it's really important because we have to conserve it, and we have to know what we're conserving and how to go about doing that. So the students get a hands-on laboratory inside and outside the classroom when it comes to this. Plus, they learn about different water concepts. They know about the water cycle, but then they learn about infiltration. What types of aquifers are there? They learn about the water table. They learn about learn about estuaries, different types of habitats dealing with the water and how they impact the amount of water that's being used. Stop share and reshare it again. Go back and forth.
While you're doing that, Rachel, can I
Yes.
ask a quick question?
Yes,
Where did you get the test kit?
The test kit comes from Carolina Biological. It's a 9-factor test kit that comes from Carolina Biological. And we also use what I use, their digital microscopes that come from there. And that also came from the grant at Carolina Biological. And I'll show you how this works here in a minute, that they actually can look at water quality. And I can put this and put a slide on there or a petri dish underneath it, and they can look at the microorganisms. So we'll get to that part here in a moment for water quality.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So we do hands-on labs because why not? It's one of the best ways to learn, personal opinion. So here again is the aquaponic system. Here's a couple different labs that we were using, and then other labs as well for data collection and analysis. And it's still testing the same things, but different ways of testing. So then students get a comparison. Is it, how accurate is it? And then, okay, how can we respond to it afterwards, after we gather the data? And these are just charts. This is a water footprint calculator worksheet. It's allowing students the opportunity to figure out how much water they use in their household. And what we do is we'll take this worksheet and then compare it to the one that is on the Southwest Florida Water Management District's website, where I obtained the SPLASH grant from. or people say swift mud. I'm not from around here, so I think that's what they refer to. This is an old outdated one. The new one's on the next next few slides, but it is a daily use where they can calculate it at home and compare it back to that one to see how accurate it really is. And then they can actually compete against other schools on the website itself too. These are some other extension activities that I do. One is the case of the mysterious renters, where students will read and they'll look at it from the landlord's perspective of college students that are in an apartment and try to see whether or not there was an extra college student there or not, and should they be paying more for their rent based on their water usage. So it puts them beyond the walls and they get to play detective. And then the other one was the classroom challenge that I had already made mention of that they get to do. So the one worksheet prior to with the water footprint, they have to actually figure out, do they lie with a score of 900 and below? Are they a water warrior? Are they an activist or enthusiast? Most students will get the water enthusiast and they'll be like, well, then how can we save water? What can we do? You know, why is it important? You know, I don't want to be that water enthusiast. I want to actually be the water warrior. So it gets them to start thinking about different ways in the household to actually conserve water and save their parents or whoever's paying the bills on water, as well as conservation at the same time. So they get to help their family out. So this worksheet goes above and beyond. It's not just a worksheet. And then this one was just a how do we get sources of water pollution? Why is water pollution something necessary to study when you're looking at water conservation? How can we attempt to stop the different types of pollution and maximize the amount of water we're conserving? So they look at that, and then they get to look at different microorganisms underwater. Why is that important to look at too when it comes to studying water conservation? How do they play a role in it? And so they look at different pathogens that are found within the water. And they have different tables, so they get to analyze different tables and graphs and charts. And then they do what's called a pond mystery mix, where they look at these microorganisms and see whether or not how much is there, and are they there because of the pollution, because of runoff. They get to play detectives when it comes to this. And they learn also different terminology, such as like vernal pools or seasonal pools, why a temperature drop too low or high, why is it necessary to have some of these organisms in here? Vorticella was something that comes back again and again, but this was something that I actually studied back in college and was actually able to grow Vorticella. They actually help at the wastewater treatment facilities. They are good bacteria types of thing. They will break down waste. So they're very important. And some of this leads to higher order thinking and allows them the opportunity then to think critically. And that's what they need to be able to do. And so these are just different images of what Vorticella are. They look like little bells and they attach to a substrate and they will feed off dead organic matter and waste. So biotic indicators of water quality, which will be on the next slide. There are 3 types: sensitive or very sensitive, somewhat sensitive, and kind of tolerant to pollution. Turbidity is like the cleanliness or clearness or clarity of water. So if it's turbid, it's going to be real cloudy. It's going to be real murky. If it's less turbid, then it's going to be clear. So they look at those as well, and they see if you have different organisms that are sensitive or not sensitive. This just talks about what vernal pools are and what rotifers do throughout microorganisms. Talks about production, reproduction. So it gives some biology in there as well for them. So you're going from environmental science into biology. And so they're learning some of these terminology as well as talking about what microalgae are, or and going into what algae do. And algae feed off of the nutrients. They feed off of the nitrates and the phosphates. And then it goes into algae. And we talk about the different types of algae. What each one has a purpose or part. And then this is their biotic indicators that they look at. They get to actually see this underneath a microscope. Yeah. So there's different ones. And this is also found, I leave this out and about the whole entire school year in my water aquatic region biome area of the classroom. So then students are looking at it and then they're like, well, when does that come in? And they see when it comes in. And so they do a whole lab just looking at the biotic indicators of water quality. And then this is a vernal pool. Talks about, oh, okay, I go into lake and reservoir pollution because you want to look at freshwater versus marine or saltwater. And so says lakes and reservoirs have higher flow rates or less effective, lower flow rates, less effective at self-cleansing, and typically have stratified layers. So then you're going to build up then those levels of pollutants. And those nutrients and all that is going to build up. And so if it's stagnant and stratified that way, then you're not getting that proper fresh water where it needs to be. You're actually not, it's not being helped at all. It has to have a, so there are ways that we have to be able to protect that water source. And so, sorry, go back a slide. Also talk about runoff and what chemical runoff is. And we go into agriculture and farming. That we need to figure out how can farmers reduce the amount of water that they're using. And we go into techniques, and I'll show you here what we're starting at Central is using drip irrigation. So they learn different techniques as to help save and conserve water during farming as well. And then we go back to the nutrient overload when dealing with algae. And the nutrient overload is having a lot of phosphorus dumped into a river or a lake. Then it's going to have a lot of harmful algal blooms. And that's what takes people's breath away. But it's also depleting some of that good oxygen that's needed. Then they do what's called a Lake Carson Crisis Interdisciplinary. I don't know if I have it with me. Yes, I do. They get to play detectives again, and they have the opportunity to figure out what's going on at the lake and who's responsible for it. Let's see. This is also purchased from Carolina Biological. Here it is. So it's called this. And there's a whole bunch of different labs for the students to do. And then for water conservation and water quality. They get a chance to look at what dichotomous keys are, which is an introduction to biology as well. But So they learn more about why is it important to save that lake, what's going on in that lake, and what can we do to increase or improve it. And then again, going back into the harmful algal blooms and what they do. And then it says nutrient pollution, which I already alluded to. Says nitrogen and phosphorus, you have an extra amount of that. And so when it's nutrient rich and you have an extra amount of that, then you have those algal blooms because they feed off of it. So sustainable ways to reduce and prevent water pollution, find substitutes for the toxic pollutants, remove hazardous waste, use natural sewage treatment methods, reduce non-point source runoff. They go into point source and non-point source. Point sources, you can point to the problem. There's the problem. We can fix it. Non-point, you don't know where exactly that problem is coming and started. Where, you can't point to it. This just goes back to the pollution again, how it originates. Let me go back to this one. And then into the ocean, because you have lakes, rivers, ocean, it's we go into talking about toxic chemicals, garbage, where everything and how everything could be transferred into it. Talk about biomagnification as well as bioaccumulation. And we look at the Pacific Garbage Patch, as well as take a look at Boy and Slot. I don't know if you've heard of this Boy and Slot, but he is a real entrepreneur. Let me see if I can just type it in real fast. If I would spell his name correctly. I don't know if you're still seeing Google or not.
We're seeing your slide.
You're seeing what?
We're
Slide?
seeing your slide.
Okay, give me 1 second to bring him up. All right, so I'll stop share and reshare it then. I think there's a couple of chats in the chat room. So he does the Great Ocean Cleanup. I think I need to share it with sound though. Hold on. Hold up.
Nice.
Here we go. So this is the invention of the interceptor, where he puts on Boy and Slide, identifies like the source of the problems coming from the rivers. And then he looks at the major rivers on Earth, takes him and his team do. And then they're like, okay, how can we actually clean up this trash out of rivers before it goes into the oceans? So if we can clean our rivers, then we can clean our oceans, and overall we'll be able to conserve water as well.
Hello.
Hey, Mr. Slat. So I won't take too much of your time. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us at CNET. And I just want to ask, can you just tell us about the interceptor and just tell us a little bit about the background and how it works, please?
Sure, yeah. So at the Ocean Cleanup, our mission is to rid the world's oceans of plastic. And for that, we need to do two things. On one hand, we need to clean up the legacy pollution, the plastic that's already in the ocean and doesn't go away by itself. But we also need to prevent more plastic from reaching the oceans in the first place. And what we found is that rivers are the main source of plastic to the oceans, and that 1,000 rivers are responsible for roughly 80% of the pollution. So 1% of rivers does 80% of the pollution. So unfortunately, though, there isn't one solution that you can just bring anywhere in the world, install within days, and that just works. So that's why we developed the Interceptor, which is the world's first scalable solution to intercept plastic in rivers.
So by scalable, you mean you can adjust the size of it to fit in different size rivers? Is that what you mean by scalable?
So by scalable, what I mean is that it can be applied to virtually any river in the world. So already some things exist that are really made for very specific locations. But the thing is, of course, that this is a global problem. So what we have developed is something that can really work in all of these, or almost all of these 1,000 rivers that need to be solved.
So how does it actually catch the plastic? There's an arm that is going across the river. How does that work?
Yeah. So when the plastic flows through a river, the first thing it will encounter is a barrier that guides the plastic to the mouth of the interceptor, where then you have a conveyor belt that scoops it out of the water and then distributes the plastic across 6 giant dumpsters that act like a buffer for the plastic, so that following that periodically you can empty it, bring it to the side of the river, and take the plastic to a recycling center. And it can do this fully autonomously while being powered day and night by pure sunlight, thanks to its solar panels and batteries.
So at the end of the day, will someone like a person have to come and empty the bin every day?
Yeah, so the interceptor collects plastic fully autonomously. The only thing you have to do is empty it once in a while. So of course, it depends per location how often that is, but generally it would be once every few days. And then you indeed take the barge out like a cartridge, bring it to the side of the river, and empty them out and bring it to recycling. So it's really the goal was to make it as easy as emptying your vacuum cleaner. It's just a bit bigger.
So you guys already have 2 installed around the world. So have you seen any success from the 2 that have been installed? I believe in Jakarta and Malaysia.
Correct. Yeah, no, they perform really really well. Yeah, so in Malaysia, that used to be one of the heaviest polluting rivers in the world, and the interceptor is it's really performing very well, taking tons of garbage out on a daily basis. Of course, the next step is to deploy the other 2 that we already built. So those ones are going to Vietnam and the Dominican Republic. And then next year we'll be starting with the scale up, because the goal is to solve those 1,000 rivers in 5 years' time.
Fantastic. So I was there. I saw the System 001 Wilson. I saw it in person in Alameda. I actually live in Alameda. And
Okay.
I covered you guys for CNET last year when you were right before you deployed it. So it went
Yep.
out to the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, and you ran into some issues with the design. So can you tell us
Right.
about the upgrades and the design for System 001/B and how it's working now? And now it's catching plastic, right?
Yeah, great. Um, so there was really 2 main issues that we had with the first iteration of our ocean cleanup system, where first we had a structural failure, and secondly, there wasn't any consistent speed difference between the plastic and the system, which meant that the system wasn't catching any plastic. What we did was we took the system back to land, back to the drawing board, made adjustments to the design, and were able to resolve the root cause of the structural failure, as well as we were able to find a way to actually get a consistent speed difference between the system and the plastic. And the way we achieve that is by turning the system around and attaching a kind of this giant parachute, underwater parachute to it, which acts like an anchor to slow down the system. And what we now see is that the system continuously moves through the water slower than the plastic, and is now actually, as we speak, catching plastic in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch.
Today, I am very happy to share with you that we are now catching plastic.
That's fantastic news, man. I was really rooting for you guys, and I'm really happy that it's working finally. So I'm sure you're still like perfecting it. Are there any plans for System 002 in the future, or what are you guys working on now with that?
Yeah, So right now we're rounding off the System 1 campaign. Yeah, sort of, I think next month we'll really start up the System number 2 campaign, where the goal is to develop kind of a bigger version of this machine that is really optimized for scale, in preparation for launching a full fleet of cleanup systems in the years to come. So now starting up System 2 development, and we'll hope to launch that as soon as possible as well.
That's fantastic, man. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us.
All right, let me go back. So he's also done a couple other versions, and they appear to be working just phenomenally. So then what I do is I have my students try to come up with their own versions of how to get rid of it. And we have a 3D printer in my classroom that I had received from another grant, that then the students get to not only see it, but they get to build it, print it off, and actually try their ideas out. Working on getting some more grants in order to have a couple more 3D printers, because they're on a small scale. And then I go into the Clean Water Act, what it is, how it came about, and why it came about. So principal law of governing pollution control, water quality, the nation's waterways. It started in 1969 in Ohio's Cuyahoga River. Let me say it right since I'm from there as well. And it was from industrial pollution in the river. So there was a great public outcry over it, and they wanted Congress to pass something that'll allow them the opportunity to have clean water, have fresh water. And so that's where that came about. These are just ways to reduce freshwater losses in industry, looking at redesign and manufacturing processes. So we go into the industrial part of it. So I try to hit every area as much as I can when it comes to water conservation. So then they look at industry. You know, oh, my dad's a lawnscaper. My dad does this, or my mom does this. How can we help them out? And then this, I use the Southwest Florida Water Management website, or SWFWMD's website, called Water Matters. And that is where I've attained about 3 splash grants over the years, maybe 3, I think. And I'll go into grant writing here in a moment to say, okay, if you want to be able to do these kind of activities and you don't have the budget for it, you can apply for their grants, and they will allow you to have that opportunity to go above and beyond and have your students succeed, and let them figure out, you know, the different things that I've already shown, as well as some other cool ideas, because I use Carolina Biological as well. This is just our landfill in Hernando County. So I just talk about reduce, reuse, recycle a little bit, throw that in there. And it's what can we do on our end by reducing waste, raising prices, slowing population growth, protecting ecosystems that store natural water, or water naturally. We can use available fresh water more sustainably. So we talk about sustainability as well. And then these are just different ways that you can do it at the house. What can you do? And they learn this not only from our environmental chapter 10, but they also learn it from a couple of those handouts throughout. So it shows them different ways that they can do, and that they can go and show their siblings what to do and kind of have a better practices. Bottom left is drip irrigation. Those are connected to the rain barrels that are on the bottom right. And connected to a faucet, but it goes into the gardens themselves. This is from the Water Matters handout and website. So we go and look at their calculations, and again, looking at ways that they can conserve water and potentially try to save as much as they can. And then this is what we're doing now. Starting next week, we have a garden and greenhouse on campus. So we are actually in the restoration phase again to get it back up to where it was and go beyond that, because we want to actually have a community garden area, along with educating the public as well. And then I have, if you want a little bit more, I have ways of grant writing.
Can I throw in a quick question for you, Rachel?
Yeah.
So what does your entire school participate in these projects, or do you just do it by individual class?
I kind of get the school involved. It's all hands on deck. On this coming Monday after school, our ROTC program, there's going to be a lot of cadets out there helping us to kind of weed and reroute the tubing, make sure there's no cracks in the tubing. So ROTC is involved. We have our chef and culinary arts, CTE, they're involved. He is in charge of the herb garden part of it. We have the area itself outside. We have an outdoor classroom, so it can be cross-curricular. On Monday, we'll make sure everything is running perfectly out there. We have a whiteboard out there. We have tall desks that we built that are made to withstand the weather. We have, it's an all hands on deck because it's all of ours. And if there's ownership, then you have the leadership and you have the buy-in, and they're going to go way beyond your expectations.
That's very cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. This was grant writing. If you're interested in grants, these are different things from the 3D printer that I was saying. This down here in the bottom, third picture is what I was talking about with that digital microscope, where you can hook it up to your computer. You can put any type of, like I did algae just a while ago. You can put just about anything underneath. I started off before that with like rocks and then with salt, so they can look at different crystals and stuff underneath it. I use it as a do now type at the beginning of class. What do you see? What are your observations? Because it's science, so what can you say is going on type. So it gives them, a different way of doing a do now without having to write it out on the board. So they can actually get with their small group, do a think, pair, share, or they can do it individually. It just whatever you feel like having them do that day that pertains to whatever we're learning, and you can build it up over time as well. So then they get used to it. Plus, with this, you can actually take pictures and videos with it. So there's a button on top where you can do that. So it's a pretty cool device to have, especially in a science classroom. And you can do like little polluted water, and they can see underneath as well. They got one of the grants. I won a bunch of classroom supplies, so I'm able to have them share out with their friends different supplies. And they were happy with the prismatic colored pencils. So little goes a long way. And some grants might only take you 5 minutes, some may take you 10, some may take you an hour. It just depends on the type of grant you want, and it depends on your needs. So, what's in it for the students? Everything beyond, they can, you give them and they will roll with it. Have your expectations high, because they will reach it and maybe surpass it as well. So see, that was all the supplies that came in that day. So then they got the opportunity to, share out with their friends and use really cool colors, for whatever we're doing. 3D printers over to the right. Look, sorry about the mess. It looks a little messy when I took that picture. But I have a lot of electronics in one area. A lot of the things in the cabinets come from the different labs and the grants. So they get to, okay, go over to that cabinet, grab that probeware, we'll use this today. No. I want them to feel like they're actually, you know, in a science classroom and be able to do these labs. And they're ninth graders, but they can do it. This one's water quality over here. Underneath were buckets that I was able to get so they can do water collection. I have some students who go out on boats. So they'll go to rivers, have some that are divers. So they'll go and collect water samples all throughout. And so we'll test different areas and possibly work with different groups, such as like Florida Fish and Wildlife, to help them out. So you can do data collection in the classroom with certain groups to help them out. And then they become citizen scientists, and that's the overall objective. And then to the right is the aquaponics system. So they learn about aquaponics versus hydroponics, and what's needed for the plants and everything to actually survive. And then like throughout when we had the hurricane, I really didn't have to do anything because they were all getting their nutrients. So it's a sustainable ecosystem. So academic success happens through differentiated instruction, problem-based learning, and project-based learning. So a grant is a funding from an individual or company that does not need to be paid back. Each grant has its own set of rules and expectations. Sometimes you have a mid-year evaluation, you have a final evaluation. So there are some grants that do need some more write-up, so that the justification, how's that money being spent? So know who your funder is, review the application, always have a purpose, know your needs, your desires, where are the students' needs, what do they need enhanced? Learn from your mistakes, go back and reapply, ask them, you know, in an email or whatnot, okay, what could I have done differently in order to better this, in order to be able to achieve the ultimate goal of receiving the grant? Don't hesitate, you know, just ask. Worst thing they're going to do is not respond. Most grants are project-based, time sensitive, and what I say is keep the topics current, use 21st century skills. And then these are just different types of grants. In Hernando County, we have the Education Foundation. Donors Choose is another one that you can do. You can share out on your social media. If you need in-kind donations, there are different places, Sam's Club, Publix, Wawa, that do it. Splash Grant is the one that I received a lot for, especially for water quality. McDonald's Golden Grant, they have grants for like food insecurity and different things. It just depends on what you are doing. National Education Association grants, they have STEM grants. Florida Farm Bureau has grants, scholarships also. So there's different websites, and I'll share this out afterwards too, this PowerPoint. This was just numbers in our district. So always have, grants are data driven. You have to know your numbers. So you do have to do a little bit of background for grants that, you know, like I did a sports grant. So I had to know all the districts' totals. So know your numbers, know your budget, know if it's district approved or not. It just depends on the district. Talk with your finance person, see what they say. So I know it differs from district to district. These were just different ones that I had received. That's the Farm Bureau one. Education Association, they have a bunch. Southwest Florida Water Management again. So I will stop sharing and hand this back over to Miss Jody.
So just a clarification, all counties have a education foundation, and they give out mini grants all the time. So just one thing you have to be aware of is what their deadlines are. As Rachel said, know that a lot of times it's time sensitive. But a lot of times, if you do reach out to them, they will help you by telling you, well, you didn't do this right. Maybe you could add a little bit more information, that sort of thing, statistics. And a lot of the information that Rachel was talking about, as far as demographics go, is available on the Florida Department of Education website. So you don't have to necessarily go to too many different places.
Yeah.
I see we lost a couple of people, but does anybody have any questions? For Rachel, before I shift gears a little bit. Rachel, that was wonderful. Your students are very lucky. That classroom is just amazing to me, that they get all that hands-on. So I am going to switch gears a little bit if I find my now I don't see it. Oh, there it is. So I am going to share my screen and see if I can do this without too much hesitation. Okay, so the Tampa Bay Times newspaper and education program, this is our website, tampabay.com/NIE. And oops, hard for me to do two things at once. There we go. Just a little background about me. That is my cat that tends to cry in the background whenever I do anything. So right now she is eating, so she will not be interrupting us at least for the next 5 seconds. I have been writing curriculum for NIE programs since about 2000. And water conservation is definitely something that is very important to us and is very important to our teachers. Just a little background about me. In addition to working at the Times, I'm also an adjunct professor at St. Leo University and Hillsborough Community College. So I know that I know what your students are like. I know that they're constantly looking for hands-on experience. I know that you want to engage them as much, which is why we asked Rachel to join us for this presentation. For those of you who are not aware, the Tampa Bay Times NIE program is a cooperative effort between schools and the Times to promote the use of newspapers as educational resources. The newspaper is informational text. The goal is to build future lifelong readers, productive citizens, critical thinkers. There's lots of research out there that shows that the more students read newspapers in their classrooms as young people, the more engaged they will become as citizens as they get older. We supply newspapers free of charge to Citrus, Hernando, Hillsborough, Manatee, Pasco, Pinellas, and Polk counties. And if you happen to be outside of those areas, all you have to do is email me, and I can also get you access to our e-newspaper. Last year, we provided more than 10 million newspapers in both electronic licenses and print newspapers. We also provide curriculum guides to Tampa Bay area classrooms. And I'm going to talk about our teacher guide in a few minutes. So I already told you this, that it helps students develop daily reading habits. Another reason to use a newspaper is it's that vital link to the real world for students who too often do not realize the value of their academic program. One of the things, I'm an English teacher, and my students never, they tell me when they graduate, they are never going to need to know how to write. They are never going to need to know how to read anything longer than a paragraph. So one of the things I like to do is try to engage them with using the newspaper in addition to the other curriculum that we're doing. How does this, off the top of my head, I always like to use Shakespeare as an example, even though I don't teach Shakespeare anymore. But, you know, when you look at the qualities of a main character, you can look in the newspaper all the time and see the correlation between things that were written anywhere from 5 years ago to hundreds of years ago and see that they still pertain to everyday life. So you all know what informational text is. It's a nonfiction type of text that is factual, and it differs from other nonfiction texts in the purpose, features, and format. One of the other things that's great about the newspaper is that it has different types of format. It has photos, it has cartoons, it has index, it has huge headlines, and it has small headlines. So it's a great way to get students interested in finding out different forms of text. So I already talked about that. For those of you who are not familiar with the e-newspaper, it is an exact replica of the newspaper online. All you have to do is sign up to get it, and it's free of charge. You can use it with your students. To sign up, you go to tampabay.com/NIE and click sign up here. To log into the e-edition, you click on login here, and then you will get a username and password sent to you by me when you sign up. Some of your schools, if you are in Hillsborough or Pinellas County, some of your schools already have school-wide access to the e-newspaper. The media specialist is the person who is in charge of that information. Unfortunately, in Pasco, Hernando, and Citrus counties, we don't have the same relationship because the media specialists are few and far between. In Hernando County, I think that they're now having a lot of their media specialists inside the classroom, so the media centers are not open as much as they used to be. So I am going to skip some of this stuff and talk a little bit about the curriculum we have. I'm going to stop sharing and bring up the internet. Go back there. There we go. Okay, so hopefully you can see our website. This is what the main website looks like. This is where all of our little tabs will direct you to find curriculum. So I am going to go to the curriculum website and scoot down to science. And as you can see, we have, sorry about that. As you can see, we have a bunch of different types of publications. The teacher guide that I'm going to talk about in a minute is actually not up here, but we do have some other publications that focus on water source quality. So this is our first one. It's called Do You Know Your H2O? And this one was produced in partnership with Tampa Bay Water. Basically, all you do is click on the download, and the publication will come up. And you can see all the information, all the activities. If you scroll to, I believe, the back page, yes, you will see that we have listed the standards for you on the back page. In some of our other publications, we're starting to list them with the direct activities, but in this particular one, the activities are, they're in little boxes here, say going beyond the text. Some of them are math related, some of them are related. We also have this great program that we did with Southwest Water Management District. Water Matters, and we also did one with Springs. The Water Matters is our most recent publication that we did with them. And as you can see, as I kind of scroll down, you can see we also have something here, weather. We have an interesting publication, Protecting Our Pipes. This is focused on Hillsborough County, but you can certainly use it in any county. We have a couple of recycle guides that we do every year. one with Pinellas, one with Pasco, and one with Hillsborough. We also have a Hernando recycling guide that we did a couple of years ago. All that information, all of these publications are available to you at no cost. If the publication says, if the listing says this publication is not available in print, it means just the PDF is available to you. But like the recycling guide, we have lots of print copies available. If you wanted class sets, we could send them to you. The way you do that is by going back up to the top, and it tells you that basically you can email order@tampabay.com and ask for copies. So the one thing that I always stress is you have to tell me who you are, what school you teach at, and how many copies you want. Otherwise, we're just going to keep going back and forth in emails constantly. So any of these publications is available to you, whether it's available in print or in just a digital copy. This Earth Day publication that we created, which came out in April, is just a digital copy. There are no, and it'll tell you on their digital. So when you scoot back up here to our curriculum, you'll see we have English language arts, we have health and physical science, we have social studies, and we have a visual and performing arts section. I'm just going to give, I know that most of you are probably science teachers, but I'm going to give a little plug for our most recent publication that we just did on genocide. And that publication is called Genocide in the 20th and 21st Centuries. Most of this is social studies and language arts based, but you can, anything that you're interested in, you can click on the PDF, look through the PDF, and see if it's something you want for your class. I see that there, let me just, okay, these are messages from, just making sure there's no. Okay, so I'm going to go back up to the top. We also have a calendar, and our calendar lists all sorts of resources for each month. So, for example, February, which is, I can't believe it, almost over. We have Black History Month, Teen Dating Violence Month. We have resources for President's Day. March is National Nutrition Month, Newspaper and Education Week, Women's History Month. April, of course, we have Earth Day, which is probably towards the bottom. We have Earth Day. We have Holocaust Remembrance Week, Alcohol Awareness Month. Financial Literacy Month is very popular in April. And of course, we also have some resources for Poetry Month. So basically, the point of doing this is to try to put as many resources in one area for you as possible. We try to, here we have listed all of our Earth Day focused publications, as well as some other sources for you. The United States Environmental Protection Agency, the History Channel, the Earth Day Network. This is actually not updated yet. I just did that. So, but there are some other great sources out there. Watermatters.org is a great resource for you. The Environmental Protection Agency, the Florida Environmental Protection Agency, Tampa Bay Water. Those will be updated in the next couple of weeks. Yeah, it still says. So in addition to that, so we have our calendar, we have our curriculum, and we have our resources. And our resources page has some really cool different types of lesson plans for you. We have the News Weekly topic. This one is focusing on gun control. But if you click on it, at the very bottom, it has an archive. So if you're looking for any kind of environmental news, you just kind of skim through the archive. The same thing with using the news by grade level. I'm just going to click on elementary here. We have elementary, middle, and high school. The grade levels are here. There are 5 different prompts every week. So if you're looking for something for your students to do at the beginning of class, or you're looking for something that relates to a specific topic, you can kind of go through these. Unfortunately, we don't have an index for these. So if you were looking for example, if you were looking for something related to a topic on Earth Day, you would have to just scroll through when we get to April. There's usually information. This usually goes back about a year. Another great resource is the front page talking. This always has some sort of article. It has action points, and then it has a video. So again, the archives are at the bottom of the page. So you can look, if you click here, you'll see the archives, and you can just kind of scroll through looking for information. So here's an article on nuclear fusion. They're not all politically based, as the one this week happens to be. And these are updated once a week. We have a vendor that updates this information for us once a week. So there's some really cool ideas here. There's also the words in the news vocabulary. Has a little quiz here for elementary, middle, and high school. The headline geography also has a quiz. So I'm going to go back. That was a lot of information very fast. I'm going to go back here. If you are looking to sign up to have access to the newspaper, you click sign up here. You just fill out this form. You select your county. I'm going to select Hernando. And you can see all of the schools that we currently serve in Hernando are listed. If your school happens to not be here, you can just send order NIE, which I think, yes, the website's here. If your school is not there, you can send order NIE an email, and we will get your school on there as quickly as possible. And then the other thing I wanted to talk to you about is the digital edition. So the digital edition, basically your login will be whatever your login is, either your last name or the school, depending on how we set that up for you. And we have to do it in an email version because we have a new electronic edition. So it's at tbtnie.com. If you want to play around with this and you don't have access right now, certainly you can write down my username and password. My username is Pushkin, which is my last name, at tbtnie.com. And the password is times in lowercase, TIME. And when you click on log in, magic. And here's the newspaper. So what you can do is you can certainly just use the newspaper as a whole, or you can go to the section, pull up local and state news. Here we have a great picture of Florida Panther talking about the new movie that's out, Half of the Panther, which is in theaters, I think, this weekend, and also going to be on National Geographic and something else, Paramount Plus or something. But you can certainly look for a specific section. You can, oh, I see. My little arrow is hidden by the. Basically, you just click on the pages. You can click on the article. You can change the article into another language. Now we're in Spanish. You can, I'm going to go back to English. Go back here. Oops, I think it switched my view. Oops. Oops, I lost it. Let's stop sharing and see what I just did. Oh, here we go. Sharing. Not as coordinated as I used to be. Oh, that's, I think I can handle this. Close that. This. See if I can share again. And for some reason, oh, here we go. To say for some reason it didn't want to take me back to the new. Basically, you can print articles out as PDFs. If you go to, you can download it like this, or you can print it as a PDF. You can create a clipping. So if you just wanted like this article, you can create a clipping of this article. If you go to archive, you can pick another day and look at if you knew that there was a, I don't see any environmental articles on the front page, but we're going to click on this article anyway and go to the 20. So you can switch days, you can switch editions, you can look through it yourself, you can have your students look through it. This dog is in disguise in case you didn't know that he's really a dog. And you also have the ads if you wanted to use math activities in that. I'm going to stop sharing. Back to website. There we go. Okay. So on our website, we have the home button, obviously, is what you're looking at here. The digital edition, you can just click here, or you can actually go to this little tab. We also have a section on resources, which has a drop-down menu, which lists, we have a summer learning page. We're getting ready to do summer reading now with our Reading with the Raise program. So that's going to be in the process of being updated. Our webinars and workshops, of which one of them you are involved in right now. We also have 2 in-person workshops for source water protection. One of them is going to be at Nature's Classroom, which is in Hillsborough County. And we're limited to 35 participants on that. So it's kind of a first come, first serve sign up. And also the other in-person workshop is also going to be in Hillsborough County, is that it is at their wastewater treatment plant. If you've never been to a wastewater treatment plant, it's kind of a fun experience, and they're going to give you a tour. As you notice, there's some rules here. You have to wear long pants. You have to wear closed toe shoes. And at both of those workshops, we're going to be providing refreshments. So if you're interested in learning more about source water protection and learning about Nature's Classroom and learning about a wastewater treatment plant, those webinars you can still sign up for. And all you do is click on register for an upcoming webinar, just like you did for this one, and you would select those. We're going to be talking about similar things, but not as in detail as Rachel has over tonight with things that you can do in your class. And then the last thing I wanted to mention here is our contact us button. Our email addresses, mine and my colleague Sue's, are both listed here. ordernie@tampabay.com is kind of our default email address. If you can't remember my email address, which is jpushkin@tampabay.com, you can certainly email Order NIE and I will get the message. We also have a Twitter feed and a Facebook feed. That. So this is an example of two of the publications that I just showed you. Do you know your H2O and Water Matters? The water source protection teacher guide that we have just created, called Answers on Tap, is going to be available for you on upload probably overnight. But if you would like me to send you the link, please feel free to email me and I will get that to you. If you show up at one of our live events, we actually will have some PDFs available for you. This is a teacher guide, not a student guide. So on the pages, there is information for you and there are activities. I think it's about 40 pages of information, and most of the activities are taken from, I think I put, maybe I did. Yes, are taken from these publications that we've done. Do you know your H2O, protecting our pipes, what not to flush, springs, Florida's natural wonders, and water maps. And all of those, except for the original Answers on Tap, are still available on our website. So I'm just going to go back to this for a minute. The focus of the teacher guide is on source water, which refers to water sources from which we get the water we drink and use. Drinking water in Tampa Bay comes from three sources: groundwater, river water, and desalinated seawater. I have to apologize, my accent starts to creep in. The longer in the day I get, the more of my original Long Island accent comes to creep in a little bit. So the purpose of the teacher guide is to explore water source protection throughout the Tampa Bay region. And I just told you about these guides. One of the things, of course, we talk about is the water cycle. There's information in the guide about the water cycle, the Florida aquifer. This is an example of the surface water that you see in the Hillsborough River, which you would get to see at nature classes. We also talk about how human actions on land affect our water. This little dog is speaking after himself so that he doesn't pollute our waters. But as Rachel talked about, there's all kinds of testing that your students can do in the classroom to test different types of water. And there's my microphone. So I'm gonna stop here, and I'm gonna ask you if you guys have any questions. I'm just gonna leave this. Actually, maybe I was gonna copy and paste the link for our survey. I think I have to do that offline. So that we have a survey monkey that we would love to hear your feedback for. So I'm gonna place that into the chat, but I'm gonna stop sharing to do that. Does anybody have questions for me or for Rachel? Please feel free to just unmute your mic.
I just wanted to say thank you for sharing the resources. They're amazing. And I know if teachers found out about them, they would definitely use them.
And where do you teach?
I'm on the school board.
Oh, great.
In Hernando, yes.
So you are a fan of Rachel?
Yes, absolutely. 100%.
Any other questions? I'm going to go ahead and stick this in here. Rachel, do you have anything else you want to add?
Oh, I wanted to say thank you for this. And I do talk about like desalination with our students, and they actually do a desalinating lab as well. So, and then, you know, I bring up not just our country, but other countries around the world because it is global. And so it's not just here. And so they learn different techniques that help wherever they can.
And I wanted to ask you how, I mean, it's very difficult. In my line of work, we're always looking for grants. So I wanted to ask you how you find the grants that you look for. You listed a whole bunch of places on your PowerPoint, but do you just like do the research, or do you
Google search? Just Google search. There used to be, like in the libraries, there probably still are, I know, books that had thousands of grants in there, but with Google or any other platform, you can narrow it down to what specifically you're looking for. And, you know, and I self-taught, so I had to learn what an in-kind donation was versus a grant, and, you know, the differences in them, and, you know, do you pay this back? I did learn though, always say thank you. Be appreciative of what you do receive. You know, a thank you goes a long way, and the students do.
And do you find that a lot of organizations, once you get a grant, the first year, they're more susceptible to giving you a grant in subsequent years?
Yes, just like the Splash Grant. I have done it for different tiers because on their website, you have different tiers that you can do it for, and they separate them out into different categories. And so I've applied now. I think I'm on category 3 with them, if I'm not mistaken. It might be 4, but you go on the different levels, and they are more apt to work with you because they know where their money is going. They know, you know, by the mid-year evaluation or the final evaluation that you submit. And yes, there's paperwork, so I keep all my stuff in binders and everything labeled, but that paperwork, you know, is minuscule compared to the overall outcome of it, because it's essentially you're enhancing the students' minds and to be able to think metacognition, use metacognitive skills. So you need to enhance those critical thinking skills because they're used to being taken by the hand and here, you know, do it for me. No. So these grants, like you said, going back to it, yes, they are willing to work with you.
And the Splash Grant, you can find that on the watermatters.org site. Is that?
Yes. Yes. And Miss Catherine Munson is part of that and works with the different areas. She's phenomenal.
Yes, she is. I work with her. She knows everything.
I use a lot of their videos too, because they make a lot of videos. But I also use that Water Matters paper in 5 different areas. And every year I kind of build with it. So yeah, it's an essential tool. They do anywhere with the Think Pair shares, they'll do posters with them. They'll take that and then they'll go into the newspaper and try to find something related to it as well. You give them, you know, a topic of, you know, find a point source versus a non-point source. And so you can actually go and dive into the newspaper and actually find, you know, different things going above and beyond. And so, you know, the first couple of weeks when they got the newspaper, they're like, what's this? I didn't think this ever existed, you know, or still existed. And now they look forward to it every time it does come in. what articles are related now? What are we doing now? And I didn't even have to keep them motivated. They were self-motivated wanting to look at them. And this is high school. So
That makes me sad that they don't, my students, I teach college students and they don't know what a newspaper is either.
they like
think, oh,
it.
they have to read TV.
And then we'll go above that and use the online versions and look at the different things. So it builds. And it's a tool and it's necessary. So, but the grants, going back to the original, I just self-taught and a lot of searching. You make mistakes, and that's one of the things. Learn from the mistakes, message them, you know, whoever you apply to, and say, okay, what could I have done in order to get this? What could I do differently? You know, keep up to date on terminology, you know, with climate change. That's an up-to-date topic. You have to keep up to date with what's current in the news. And so those newspaper helps them and helps me do that when it comes to writing those grants.
That's great to hear. Does anybody else have any questions? No.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel, for your time. I really appreciate it. If nobody has any other questions, I am again going to ask you to please fill out our little Survey Monkey about the webinar tonight. And if you need any information, if you're looking for copies of my PowerPoint or Rachel's PowerPoint, feel free to email me and I will make sure that we get that information to you. Otherwise, I will let you get on with your evening. And thank you for joining.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.